Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, it's been another busy week in the motor trade, Phil, with lots of headlines kicking around this particular week about finance sales, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, and we'll be covering all of that in the first half. But before we do, we recorded a bonus episode this week, didn't we?
We did, with, as you say, friend of the pod, with Robert Forrester. Obviously, as many will know, as the CEO of Vertu Motor Group, and what a fantastic interview that was. You know, he reached out. Obviously, we've been saying we'd love to get him on to sort of get an update of where he's at the minute. We obviously you'd have seen he did his financial update, didn't he? He did his trading update to the market, and it seemed a very opportune time to grab him and get a bit of time with him on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, the interview was ostensibly about the trading update, but once you're in a conversation with Robert, you're kind of aware that it can go anywhere, can't it? So as well as the trading update, which was a lot to cover, we got him talking about the March markets, you know, his thoughts on how March could pan out and the sort of short to medium term for the coming months. As well as what's happening with the group at the moment. So there was a lot to talk about, and it's actually gone down really, really well. I mean, we do monitor how many downloads we're getting for episodes, and this one, as we speak, has only been live for 24 hours, and it's kind of gone off the charts, isn't it?
It hasn't it? Do you remember when we had Dash and Robert on sort of similar times, and they both sort of, you know, had fantastic downloads, and there was a bit of a sort of competition, but we always tried generating the competition between Robert and Dash back then, didn't we, when Dash was heading up the Marshall business, but we always tried doing that a little bit between them. But no, it's great, and obviously there's one with Robert, everyone knows you get good value with Robert, and I think you missed out on the fact that we can't get through a conversation with Robert without talking about the political environment, and that was no different. And he's very open and transparent about his views towards the political environment and how it's impacting, one, his business, and two, the automotive business sector in general. But yeah, fantastic interview and chat with Robert as always.
Yeah, spoiler alert, there were a few mentions of the Seth mandate.
Yes. But we'll play you partway through, after this morning, actually, just first thing, you'll get an interview, a snippet of the conversation with Robert there. But I won't spoil it yet. I'll tell you what will be the bit that we're going to share with you this morning. But also today, you check out our latest supplier special with Generational, and this is the startup, the specialist in the supply of electric vehicle battery health checks and the certification services for the car dealers. So we're in a good conversation there with co-founder and CEO with Oliver Phillpott, and I think this was on your podcast feed again from earlier in the week. It's getting a good listenership, and it was a fantastic chat with Oliver, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I learnt so much about battery degradation, which is actually a theme that we'll return to after the extract in the second half of today's show.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
Before we look at the week's headlines, here's an extract from our interview with Vertu Motors boss Robert Forrester. Although our conversation was mostly about the group's latest trading update, which signalled a drop in full-year profits, we also asked Robert about an attack by eco-protesters on the group's Land Rover sites in Truro and Exeter.
Well, it looks like three well, in the words of the terrorists themselves, let's be honest, 3 dealerships, 2 Vertu ones, which is Truro and Exeter Land Rover, and I believe Land Rover in Bristol, were targeted at around 3 in the morning by a well-organised gang who decided to put a power drill through the tyres of every one of our cars that were on the forecourt. So that could be customers' cars, it could be used car stock. And then they decided to post a video of this act on Twitter. And let's be honest, there are people in the world that add value, get up in the morning, go to work hard, serve customers, earn money and pay tax. And there are some people who don't.
Yes, I can imagine which category they fall into, Robert. So it was clearly an act of terrorism to the eco-terrorists.
Yeah, it was in their own words. It was to punish businesses for selling SUVs that apparently kill.
Punish. After what we've been talking about with your finances and the ZEV mandate. Yeah.
And that, it massively helps, doesn't it? That's really going to help society. It's changed my mind on environmental matters, obviously. You just think, what possible rationale is there for that? And there's some very strange people about. The country is full of some very strange people. Anyway, we'll get on with it.
Yeah, exactly.
We will now buy 300 tyres.
I'm going to say, that's it. Yeah. Insurance are happy. You spend some more money on tyres.
Yeah, we'll buy 300 tyres using petroleum to make the tyres.
And 300 tyres go into landfill.
Yeah, so we'll hit our parts target on tyres, won't we?
But, Robert,
this isn't very good, is it?
No,
this is not. And this is the second time Exeter's been hit, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Exeter was hit about 6 months ago. Quite similarly, or this time they actually the last time they actually put pamphlets on all the cars explaining why they were doing it.
This thought I'd let you know.
Well, that was helpful.
An explanation.
But we'll just have to get on with it, and I won't get too upset about it because the world has always been full of idiots, and now we've identified a few more.
Yeah, you've got a few things more to focus your attention on at the minute, haven't you, to be fair, if nothing else. I mean, huge thank you, Robert, and I know it's a busy time for you, especially when you do any kind of trading update, and appreciate you giving your time, and it's always great to have you on, that, and as I always say, you're always welcome back on any time to share your views on all things automotive as we get to. So appreciate the time, and thanks for taking the time out today. It's been a pleasure as always.
Well, thank you for inviting.
Well, some great immediate feedback, because that had only happened the previous day, hadn't it? So, Robert was still processing it and putting in wheels in motion to resolve the problem. Because, as he pointed out, it wasn't just the cars in stock; it was also customer cars that were damaged.
Yeah, it was, and obviously very jovial about it as well. But it was a great chat. But as you say, listen to the full interview there on your podcast feed from early on in this week, and get the trading update as well from Robert, because he's very open and honest about his trading update this time.
So moving on to this week's headlines, they come from AM, BBC News, Car Dealer, Motor Finance, Motor Trader and the Daily Express. Starting with, the first half of today's show will look at the latest developments in the car finance crisis, starting with dealers urged to be upfront on commission payment issues as buyer doubts grow in latest Motors survey. The Supreme Court rejects Chancellor Rachel Reeves' intervention in car loans case, and Lloyds Banking Group ring-fences £1.2 billion for handling car finance crisis. So moving on in other news, we have a report on a recent Which survey which finds EV battery degradation may be less severe than widely thought. Service plans have been identified as a key driver for customer satisfaction, finds a JudgeService survey. And finally, this week, a long-forgotten European car company is about to be revived as a budget EV and petrol brand.
That'll take many of the older generation back a bit of time, won't it, when we get to that story at the end there. But you and I like to look at these rebirths of some of these brands, don't we, Curtis?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Just as we try to get our head around some of the new brands that are coming into Europe and into the UK,
reintroduce an old one.
An old brand coming back.
Yes, they do. But as Curtis said there, we're heading over to AM Online first of all. So again, as Curtis pointed out at the start of this morning, discretionary commission disclosure is a hot topic in general across the sector. So dealers urged to be upfront on commission payment issues as buyer doubts grow. So this is obviously based on a new survey that's been revealed that half of car buyers are reconsidering using dealer provided finance, due to concerns over undisclosed commission payments. Now, this plays right into what the FCA were meant to be looking at around that discretionary commission disclosure, which is obviously then being trumped by the High Court and subsequently Supreme Court, hasn't it? But it's certainly playing into the market a lot more now.
Yeah, definitely. And this is based on research that Motors did for its latest consumer insight panel. And I did work with the team there on this. So I have seen the data, and it really is fascinating. There's some great insights in this. And the research covers 2,000 buyers. So it's customers out there, their current thoughts. And it found that 53% of buyers are aware of the issues related to motor finance sales, with awareness rising to 59% among men and 63% among over 55s. But awareness is actually higher among new car buyers at 63% compared to used car buyers at 50%. And additionally, the research shows 46% of informed buyers say they would reconsider or reject dealer-provided finance altogether as a result of this.
Yeah, and it is a hot topic, isn't it? I mean, whether it is, we've seen obviously the things from Martin Lewis, and we've talked a lot about these stories from some of the big nationals, haven't we, over the months? But this is playing right into that car dealer sector and how consumers are viewing this towards their preferred financing through that dealer network. And Lucy Tugby, who's the marketing director at Motors, highlighted the need for dealers to be transparent about their finance processes due to the ongoing legal proceedings having undoubtedly created uncertainty amongst buyers. And he's quoted to say that our research shows how awareness of the issue varies widely depending on the factors such as demographics and whether customers are buying a new or used vehicle. And we advise that dealers are open about the action they have taken to improve their processes to build trust with their car buyers, and that this provides an opportunity to improve transparency earlier in the sales process as per the Financial Conduct Authority guidance on understanding the role of commissions and finance. So it's quite a poignant statement that the dealers, have got an opportunity here, haven't they, to in their process.
Yeah, that's actually the key, really, because whilst it may look negative, the survey also found that there's this growing shift away from outright purchase to some form of finance. So currently 61% of owners outright purchase their vehicles, but when asked, 53% plan to do so for their next vehicle. And the outright purchase customers who are moving out of that are looking at monthly payments. And of course, a lot of those monthly payments are provided by dealers. So there is an opportunity here for dealers to reassure buyers and actually increase their finance penetration, despite some of the sort of headlines that are kicking around at the moment about finance sales.
Yeah, definitely. And sticking with that subject, we're heading over to BBC News. So obviously this hit the headlines quite significantly this week, and we covered the story a few weeks back, didn't we, when it was first announced where the Treasury and Rachel Reeves were going to get involved in the discretionary High Court and referral to the Supreme Court proceedings, and announcing that obviously on the impact that the potential wrong decision could have on the UK consumer lending sector in the more broader sense, not just automotive, and obviously, goes against the government's economic growth plans. But the headline is that Reeves' intervention into car loans case rejected, and the Chancellor Rachel Reeves' attempt to intervene in a landmark case over controversial car loans has been blocked by the UK's biggest or highest court, and that's the Supreme Court. So it's an interesting one, this one, isn't it?
It is, and I guess it's no big surprise that the intervention has been rejected. And I think, and I'm not defending the government in any shape or form, but I think Rachel Reeves had to be seen to be doing something to protect, or certainly highlight, the impact that it's going to have on the banking sector if it's ruled in favour of the complaints. So within this story, it does also make clear that the court rejected applications from Consumer Voice, which was a compensation advisor, and also the Finance and Leasing Association, but it did approve applications from the FCA and the National Franchise Dealers Association, so they will be represented. And the piece goes on to say that the court's time is limited, so it sometimes rejects interventions from parties who it believes may give similar evidence. So that may give a bit of clarity there into some of the court's thinking.
Yeah, and I think at the time, as you pointed out, I think when it was announced the potential intervention or involvement from the Treasury and more directly from Rachel Reeves, I think it was questioned because that would be a landmark thing to happen, wouldn't it? And I suppose there was a concern that it would make a bit of a case for them being involved with court proceedings going forward. Which is obviously why it was pointed out that they would be fully transparent in their involvement. So yeah, it is an interesting one, this one. I suppose selfishly from a automotive dealer network perspective, because of the NFDA and who they represent within the UK's franchise dealer network, and some of the larger supermarkets that are also members of that association. I suppose getting that input into this discussion and the findings is obviously, helping to support the dealer network here in the UK. So, in one way, it's good because obviously it focuses attention on the automotive sector. Because, as I said before, this isn't just about, this has ramifications right across B2C and B2B lending and consumer lending in its entirety, not just the automotive sector or car loans. So it has a bigger impact, but I suppose NFDA's involvement does focus it on our area.
Yeah, and following on from that, the next story is from Car Dealer, and the headline is Lloyds ring fences £1.2 billion for handling car finance crisis as bank puts aside additional £700 million. So in the last story, we were talking about the potential impact of the decision going against banks. And what we're seeing now, and certainly over recent months, is a lot of the big banking groups putting aside money for any potential payouts. So this within this story, it says that it's Lloyds Banking Group has almost tripled the amount of money it's now assigned to handling the car finance crisis, as the potential impact of it continues to grow. And the extra funds takes the bank's total provision to £1.2 billion. So, yeah, we're talking big figures here, aren't we?
Yes, yeah, and I mean, it obviously, we know that the court the case is set to open on the 1st of April, I think.
Yes.
And then obviously there's the process of decision after that, and what they advise, and whether it's what advice to give to FCA or FOS and other people like that. But I think this is some big eye-watering numbers involved with this. But I mean, obviously Lloyds has a very big exposure, doesn't it, and a very big revenue stream from consumer lending in general in that automotive space.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly one of the most exposed. So after the break, we'll have an extract from our latest supplier special with Oliver Phillpott, CEO of startup Generational, which is providing an EV battery health check and certification service, especially for car dealers.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated supplier specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
With battery degradation at the heart of what Generational does, can you outline the biggest impacts on battery degradation from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question, Phil, because, for 100 years, I think the automotive industry has relied on age and mileage to determine the value of a car. But for an EV's battery, which is the most fundamental component of an EV, those two factors are not really very good predictors. I think it's also an especially important question because for most people in the future, their EV battery will be the second most valuable thing they own beyond a house. So, they really want to look after it. In a nutshell, battery degradation depends on how the vehicle has been used, right? So things like rapid charging, storing the vehicle at a high state of charge, deep discharges is something we talk about, which means charging the battery all the way up to 100% and then discharging all the way down to 0. And also how efficiently you drive, which determines how much power you're putting through the battery every day. All these things cause faster degradation. I think it's probably worth saying that generally battery degradation is much better than consumers expect, particularly right now in the UK market. And, if you use an EV correctly, it can last a really, really long time. But there's a fair amount of variation out there, and it really all depends on what kind of life that vehicle has had.
And Oliver, turning to your dealer proposition, how was this developed and what do you offer?
Yeah, well, it all started with some really fascinating consumer research. What we discovered was that UK car buyers have a clear preference. When given the choice, they'll opt for an EV where they can verify the battery's health. It's similar to how you'd want to know the mileage or service history of a traditional car. So we really built our dealer proposition around this insight. And what we do is continuously expand our database of supported models to cover, every vehicle and make and model of EV on the market. And our brilliant engineering team works diligently to analyze each new vehicle's battery system and add it to our testing capabilities. But we knew that, the technical capability wasn't enough on its own. We've been fortunate to work closely with Leo Nelson, who's the former marketing director at Sytner. And his expertise has been invaluable in shaping our offering into something that really gives buyers that crucial confidence they need when they're purchasing an EV. So what we've ended up with is a solution that helps dealers transform battery uncertainty from a barrier to EV sales into a powerful selling point.
And how would a dealer typically carry out one of your health checks and issue a state of health certification for it?
It's super straightforward. We've designed it to be simple enough that anyone can use it, even my mum. I can walk you through it. So you start with our app on your phone or tablet. You choose the make and model of the vehicle, and the app then guides you to the car's diagnostic port. And Normally that's by the pedals. You just plug in our small OBD unit there. You tap to start the test in the app, and within about a minute, you have your results. So the system generates a comprehensive certificate that becomes a valuable marketing tool. It shows everything that a potential buyer wants to know. So the battery's health status, real world range estimates for different conditions like summer versus winter driving or city versus motorway use, and also details about the remaining manufacturer's battery warranty. And it's really that simple.
Well, I mean, that is a slightly longer, extended snippet there from the conversation with Oliver Phillpott from Generational, but we felt that it was very informative in terms of that battery health marketplace, because it is talked about a lot, whether that's in the dealer space, consumer space, remarketing, wholesale space. It's a hot topic in terms of, what it does, the myths behind a battery health. So the full interview with Oliver is on your podcast feed from earlier in the week, and he goes into a lot more detail about what they do, some of the myths around it, who they've got involved with Generational, and how they're entering the marketplace there, and shares his details of how you may want to get in touch with Oliver to hear more about what Generational do offer the sector. But it was a good interview, that, wasn't it, Curtis?
It was, yeah. Context is everything, and what Generational are doing is really providing a service that's needed in the dealer community, especially for dealers selling used EVs, and many selling used EVs for the first time. So it's all around that confidence in sourcing the cars and selling them. Yeah. And tying in with this, and it's purely coincidental, Phil, this, I was pleased to stumble across a story in Motor Finance this week with the headline, EV battery degradation may be less severe than expected, according to a Which survey. So this is a survey that Which has carried out involving just over 3,500 EVs, and is kind of revealing some of the insights into how quickly EV batteries degrade over time. So the study actually suggests that while battery degradation is inevitable, it may not be as severe as some fear. And this really is the key to the story, because what they found was that EVs purchased in 2017 or 2018 showed a battery capacity drop to approximately 93% of the original state. Meanwhile, owners of EVs bought more recently in 2019 or 2020 reported an average drop of 96%. Capacity remaining. And in addition, vehicles purchased between 2021 and 23 maintained approximately 97% of their battery life. So not the horror stories that we kind of hear about anecdotally. So definitely a piece of research that's worth looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it ties perfectly into what Oliver was talking about. And there is a story in AM Online this week, which is basically talking about Generational and what they offer the sector. But if you want to listen to that audio, listen to your podcast feed from earlier on in the week. But no, I think it plays nicely into that, because it's about the myths and what certification does and how it gives consumer confidence and everything else. And as Oliver said in that snippet there, helps with that sales process and building confidence with the consumer when looking at a used battery electric vehicle. So very, very.
Yeah. And you know what? There's a lovely stat in this. It actually measured the average mileages of these EV drivers. So the average was 6,001 miles. So that's they don't go into this, but that also addresses some of the recharging issues, because if you're averaging 6,000 miles a year, recharging isn't as big an issue as it was certainly suggested, as we started transitioning to EVs. That is more manageable.
There's a lot of myths in the market about it, isn't there? Yeah. As many will know. But heading over to motortrader.com, and this is that service plans offered by dealers are key to customer satisfaction. Now, this is a very intriguing piece of research by JudgeService on the consumer attitudes towards service plans and the dealers in terms of that who offer service plans, cosmetic repair, insurance, extended warranties, they're achieving higher levels of customer satisfaction according to the findings from JudgeService survey, which reached 436,100 customers. That's a good customer base there, isn't it? So yeah, it is intriguing, this, isn't it? Because it's not necessarily that they're taking out these insurance products it's the fact that the dealer is offering them and giving them the option of buying it is helping with that satisfaction.
Yeah, definitely. And this is another piece that I worked with JudgeService on. So I did have a look at that research. And as you say, it's a big piece of, the sample is huge because it's over 436,000 customers. And this is over the course of last year. And what they found was that service plans saw the biggest overall increase in customer satisfaction, rising from just 53% when they weren't offered to 86% when they were offered. And that's an uplift of 60%. So we're talking big figures here, big and a big opportunity for dealers, because whilst not every one of those will result in a sale of a service plan, the customer comes away feeling pleased that they've been at least offered it, because they've just invested in this new or used car, and the dealer has shown them a way of protecting that car, monitoring their costs, controlling their costs in terms of servicing. So upsells, they do actually generate customer satisfaction, and this is very much what the JudgeService survey is showing.
Yeah, they say it's not necessary. There is obviously, one, the revenue opportunity. Two, you're tying the customer into your business, aren't you, for future, because they've come back to get their vehicle serviced. Two, we know that there are reports that voluntary termination is on the increase, and partly to do with customer costs of maintenance and repair that are coming in on vehicles. So it plays right into the market that we find ourselves in around that customer satisfaction, thinking about the customer's budgetary costs and things like that. But I think there is a great quote in the report from Neil Adley, who's the managing director of JudgeService, that says that as we enter the all-important March plate change, our research shows dealers have an opportunity to maximise their revenue opportunities by ensuring processes are in place to promote upsells in every single car buying transaction, because customers appreciate being offered them. So that's key, playing back there. Don't be frightened of offering these products. Yeah. Uptake's great when you do offer it, but actually it does add to that satisfaction from the consumer perspective as well, if you do get these add-ons into the sales process correctly at the right time.
Yeah, and Neil shared an interesting fact from previous research, because they found that with service plans, when they are offered, there's a 1 in 2 chance of them being bought. So yeah, there's a huge potential there where service plans aren't being offered. It's a way to generate that incremental business and retention, because 1 in 2 will be bought.
Exactly. Now, we've got an and finally. We've not had an and finally for a while, have we, Curtis?
We haven't, no.
We haven't. So we are heading over to the Express now, and this is long-forgotten car company to return with ultra-affordable petrol and EV model. And this is, as I say, when I saw this, I thought, this is right up Curtis's street, this one. I remember this brand, and I wish I didn't. But I do.
Me too.
But somebody's bought the rights to the name and are potentially going to bring it back.
Yes, Yugo.
Yes, Yugo.
A name from the 70s and 80s. And I mean, Yugo as a manufacturer goes back to that sort of post-war Soviet period in Yugoslavia, where it was domestic car production. But I don't think we started seeing the Yugo cars, certainly in the UK, until back end of the 70s and certainly throughout the 80s and into the 90s. So sort of cheap and cheerful alternatives to, well, I suppose, larders at the time when they first came over here. Yeah.
And this is that a Serbian professor has vowed to relaunch a once popular car company. And it does cite here that from the 1980s and 90s to sell, as I said earlier, retro-themed affordable hatchbacks. So not only are you getting affordable hatchbacks and you're getting the Yugo back, they are going to be retro-themed as well. So is this not just bringing them back? I don't know.
Well, retro theme does concern me because they weren't terribly pretty cars at the time.
No, might have regulation issues with the UK regulations, but we'll see.
Exactly. But yeah, as you say, this professor, so he's an automotive supplier expert and economics lecturer at the University of Belgrade. And he's actually secured the international trademark rights to the Yugo brand. And Yugo, I mean, it was a big name in Europe, but also America. Yugo did very, very well in America, which is surprising because they were small cars, cheap and cheerful in a market dominated by big cars.
Yes, and there are some pictures of them, of the model that some of the listeners may remember, but also there are some images of potential what the new models will look like if they do bring them back into the market. They're talking here of in order to keep the design fresh, the upcoming Yugo also uses LED headlights and tail lights, a sporty looking front bumper, and a large set of alloy wheels. Interesting description there, Curtis.
Yeah, presumably air conditioning and seat belts as well.
I sort of get electric windows and things like that we will do. But they do say that the owner hopes to launch the new hatchback in 2027. However, it is not known whether there are any plans to introduce the car in the UK. Maybe that's back to the challenges they may face of regulations, that actually the cost of building the vehicle to UK regs might make the price prohibitive for what they want to do. But certainly it does sound like the Yugo is going to be back onto the conversation of vehicles and new entrants into the market. We'll have to think about that, Curtis, going forward, because we talk a lot about Chinese new entrants.
Yes.
In it, we're going to have to think about Serbian new entrants now, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. We didn't see this one coming, so we'll add that to the growing list of new brands heading to Europe and the UK.
But hopefully, yes, and so hopefully we've given you a good overview of the headlines for this week. Definitely a lot happening in that discretionary commission sector at the minute, that finance sector, as we head through February into March, and then obviously towards the Supreme Court date of the 1st of April. Great interview, as I say, with Robert Forrester. Do pick that up on your podcast feed. You'll really enjoy the chat and the update on the general trading update from Robert, as always with that one. And don't miss the interview there and the chat with Oliver Phillpott from Generational. Very much lots of conversations around the sector about what Generational are offering and what they bring to that battery health sector as well. So both those full interviews are on your podcast this week.
Well, that was a packed show, but that really is all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.